Trying to get pregnant again while you're still nursing is something that I get asked about so often. So, Dr. Leah and I decided to dedicate an entire episode on the topic. There's a lot to understand about the way lactational physiology differs from a fertile or pregnant physiology, and we must understand these hormonal and metabolic interplays in order to make meaningful and effective changes that can help increase our chances of pregnancy while we're still nursing. I hope that this episode can clear up some confusion and it gives you a guiding path on how to grow your family while still nursing others in a healthful way for you and baby. Let's go.
Welcome to Healthy as a Mother, the podcast for becoming and being a mother, with your co-hosts, Dr. Leah Gordon and Dr. Morgan McDermott, two naturopathic doctors who get it.
Each week, we teach you how to be the healthiest mother you can be, from fertility and preconception to pregnancy and birth prep, through postpartum and throughout motherhood, empowering you with the natural health guidance and education you're not getting elsewhere, so you can confidently navigate the broken system at large.
The real, the raw, the untalked about. And remember, this information is not intended to diagnose, treat, or manage any disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Growing a baby, healing postpartum, making milk? Your body's mineral needs are off the chart during these times, and that's why Dr. Leah and I swear by Relight by Redmond, the real salt people, an electrolyte powder packed with USA mined unrefined sea salt and essential minerals like magnesium, calcium, and potassium. Unlike many popular electrolyte companies, Redmond is the only company who is completely transparent about their sodium source because they own and operate the mine. It's clean, delicious, and the perfect thing for labor, breastfeeding, and thriving in mom life. So go ahead and grab a sample pack to try all of the flavors or hand your trust over to me and start with strawberry lemonade. Go to redmond.life and use code HEALTHYMOTHER for 15% off. Hydration handled.
All right, we are back for another episode, and we are talking all about breastfeeding and trying to conceive, which is a question Dr. Morgan and I both get a lot. And she's going to kind of lead this one, and I'll chime in where it makes sense because it's tricky when we want to nourish one of our babies and also start to prepare to bring another one into the world. It has its own obstacles. So let's get started.
Okay, yeah, I get this question all the time. People want to know, is it okay to get pregnant while you're still nursing? Is it possible? Do I have to wean first? How do I wean first? What happens if I do get pregnant? There's all sorts of different questions. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't feel like there's that many resources about it because for some people it can happen and it's no big deal. And then you can either wean during the pregnancy or you go on to like tandem nurse or you just continue to, kind of go until maybe your supply naturally dries up or something like that. And so, but for some people, it's absolutely never going to happen until you wean because of just the way that the physiology is in a totally different state. So this is just what it's called, but for the purposes of this episode, lactational physiology means like while you're breastfeeding, and then pregnancy physiology is while you're pregnant. And so, or for fertile physiology, I guess too, is like when you're ovulating and you're having that sort of robust potential every month that you could get pregnant. And so just to clear up like a few little myths, yes, you can get pregnant while you are nursing. It may be more challenging. And in terms of the idea of like miscarriage, increased risk while you are still nursing another baby, if that is a component, it is because of low progesterone. Now, we have an episode about low progesterone. We also have an episode about recurrent pregnancy loss. So you can check out both of those to hear more about this. But that would be the like big main reason why we would potentially have any sort of level of increased risk of miscarriage was just that our progesterone was too low because it is kept in a lower state during nursing. So one of the things, and I'll touch on this again later when I'm talking about like, well, what do we do now? Would be that I think it is a good idea to test our progesterone when we get pregnant if we are nursing because the chances of it being low and needing support are higher. So anyways, basically, I wanted to just kind of go through why it is that we don't ovulate as much or at all during breastfeeding, because that is the key to understanding why this may not be happening for you. So some people are like, I think even today I read a DM in my Instagram DMs that was saying like, I have a 13-month-old and I'm trying to get pregnant again. It's not been happening. They've been trying for a couple months. In my mind, I'm like, okay, 13, and they're exclusively nursing this baby. So a 13-month-old is still drinking like so much milk. So we just need to understand that in order to make milk, we're going to have high prolactin. Prolactin is one of the hormones. And because we have higher prolactin, one of the things that does is it suppresses FSH and LH. which are two other hormones that are needed for our process of ovulation. In addition, we have lower estrogen. So prolactin also keeps estrogen lower. And just all of breastfeeding, there's lots of things that keep estrogen lower. When we have lower estrogen, we're not going to have as robust of ovulation as well, but also our lining of our uterus is going to be thinner. So even if we had a conception, maybe it would have a hard time implanting, etc. But many people won't have a period at all until maybe 6 months postpartum, 12 months postpartum. Also, it's even up to normal, up to 18 months, something like that. And
Oh,
sometimes
can I
people,
ask a question about that?
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you because I had a question from a person on my Instagram
Hmm.
asking they're 4 months postpartum and they started getting their period. And that was actually me too. Is that a sign of health, a sign of not health? Is that good, bad? Like, can you speak to that as well of having it come back so soon?
Yes. So they, ooh, ow, I just rammed my hand into my desk. Um, they say they in,
I know. I'm always like, they, who's
who
they?
is they? We don't know. Um, that in traditional Chinese medicine, the earlier the cycle comes back is sort of seen as like a sign of health. And so I've had it come back. I mean, this is not like this is going to sound braggy, but it's not. But I've had it come back at 7 weeks postpartum, two different times.
Oh my
One time
goodness.
at 12 weeks postpartum and one time at 6 months. And that's been while exclusively nursing all throughout the night. And I don't know. I think I always had a very and have had a really robust menstrual cycle, so I don't know if that's partially why. Um, but either way, no, it's not bad. It can affect your breast milk supply in the days leading up to your bleed actually starting, and maybe that first day of does not mean you need to supplement with something extra. It just might mean that you notice a slight dip, like a less fullness of your breast, or baby wants to nurse a little bit more, and that's the perfect system. You just let them nurse a little bit more. Or maybe if your pumping output is less, you need to do some more pumps or something. That is just like a cyclical monthly thing that you're going to notice. And it's like everybody experiences it and gets through it and it's okay. It does not mean that we need to be like, oh my gosh, my baby's not getting enough all of a sudden. It's not that large of a dip. It's just a small little whoop. And sometimes you don't even notice it. So, but anyway, no, yeah, that's fine. You just need to know that before you're going to actually see red blood, period, you will have ovulated 2 weeks prior. And so this is where a lot of people accidentally get pregnant because they think, oh, hypothalamic, or not hypothalamic, excuse me. We do have an episode about that as well, but lactational amenorrhea. So amenorrhea, anything with a in front of it means it's not happening anymore. And so menorrhea is like your menstrual cycle. So amenorrhea, you're not having a menstrual cycle because of lactation. So this is like this idea that yeah, when you are nursing, you are much less likely to ovulate. But that does not mean it's like a form of birth control. So do not use breastfeeding as a form of birth control if you really don't want to get pregnant. If you are like open to the idea and it's whatever and you're just kind of going with the flow, then sure, fine. And like the chances are lower, but not for everyone. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and because here's the thing is that you're not likely to have very obvious ovulation signs like classic cervical mucus and things, also because you're probably not going to be watching out for those symptoms because it could happen at any moment. And then 2 weeks later, you would bleed if you didn't get pregnant on that cycle. And so it's just sort of this like looming thing. What I tell people, this is why at the 6 week appointment, doctors are always so up in women's business being like, what's your form of birth control? This is why I know that sometimes people can feel a little bit like it's like so sudden and soon. It's like, well, I just had a baby, and like, why is this their main prerogative? They want to talk about it. Well, they want to talk about it because you will have no clue what your cycle is doing. And if you're nursing, well, even if you're not nursing, it doesn't matter because again, until you get that first bleed, you won't know when you've been ovulating. So my point is that use a condom or do something else, or you might be on birth control or do an IUD or something, because if you really, really don't want to get pregnant, then you do need to be more cognizant of that. But anyways, so yeah, what's happening in those women where they get it back really early and they're still able to have a full breast milk supply? Potentially, I don't know. Like, it would be really interesting to do some studies around. Do they have just lower prolactin, but then they're still able to have enough milk, or do they have compensatory higher estrogen, and so it's
Yeah.
all I
I
don't
would say
know.
that, I mean, because I know I have high prolactin. I even had high prolactin before I got pregnant, and I haven't done testing. I'm going to soon, but I'm sure I have high prolactin. I make milk like a cow, but I also have high estrogen, and I've always had historically high estrogen. So I wonder if it's like I just have a robust amount of hormones. I just have higher hormones in that regard, not testosterone and DHEA, the things that are fun for sex, but um, for being like fertile, in that regard. So I would be interesting to know if that is the case. Like maybe higher prolactin, but in the presence of higher estrogen will bring your cycle back. Because low estrogen is often what leads to these light periods, scanty periods, irregular periods, that kind of thing. So it's almost like this, I'm like this like robust, energetic, like I'm going to bleed a lot is very estrogenic.
Yes.
And the lack of bleeding is very low estrogen. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And so it's a protective system too. We have to remember that the reason why we're not ovulating during this time period, like why is it that we don't just have the baby and then 1 month later on a normal cycle we start getting a period again? Well, it's protective of the baby that we have in front of us so that we can make the milk for them to get them to survive and sustain through, eating enough solids to be able to wean from milk. Um, and so that's why it's really, really normal and common not to get your period back until you completely stop nursing or beyond the first year. Um, I get messages all the time of people asking me, like, I haven't got my cycle back yet and I'm 15 months, but I'm exclusively breastfeeding. Like, is there something wrong with me? No, that is so common. It's very, very normal. Now, if you wean, let's say you wean at 15 or 18 months, and then like 6 more months goes by with no period, that would be abnormal. And I would look into that because there's something that's going on there. And so sometimes we need to trigger and trip the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system, the HPA axis, and how it communicates also with the ovaries. It can, because the brain can be in this like sort of suppressed state with the hyperlactin during lactational physiology, it can kind of sometimes almost like I don't know, it's like a computer that needs to be like a little rebooted or something. It can just sort of stay in this sleepy zone. It's like, whoa, hello, knock knock, like we need to wake back up. And that can be then,
Or you're in a state of caloric deficit, which
yes,
is what initially causes a woman not breastfeeding to lose her cycle, is that she's either over exercising, under eating, or
yes.
she's just under eating, meaning you're in a caloric deficit, you're not eating enough for your activity. And a lot of women postpartum might not think, well, I'm not going out and exercising all the time, but you're breastfeeding, which is very calorically demanding. So if you're not eating enough or your gut health isn't strong enough to absorb like proper nutrients and you're giving so much out with your milk, your body will still say, oh, you're in a caloric deficit. You're not getting enough to have a surplus. And fertility is all about surplus. You have to have excess surplus to be fertile. Otherwise, it's like, nope, because you don't have enough to give. So it's another thing people forget, that you're giving so much in breastfeeding.
Yeah, and your body just goes, "Oh, this is not a good time to get pregnant." If we don't have enough nutrients to be able to take care of our one singular body, clearly we're not going to have enough nutrients to make a baby in this time period. And it's again, guys, we have to think about this. Humans are animals, and it's protective that women were not able to get pregnant during times of like famine when there was not enough food to go around. It was a good thing that the sex that they were having didn't result in babies at those time periods, because it would be even more difficult to make that baby come to term and then care for that baby. And so the body is smart, it's like we can't do this. We don't have the ability to do it. So a lot of women who are lactating, even if they are eating well and even if they have that sort of constitution where they have excess weight on them, it's not true that breastfeeding is always going to make people lose weight. A lot of people have complete opposite, where they can't lose weight until they are out of the lactational physiology state, which is so interesting. And I don't know, you never know who is going to be that person. Like why some women will be that way and some women won't. It doesn't seem to have to do anything with their pre-pregnancy metabolism. I know thin women who have a hard time losing weight until they've stopped breastfeeding. I know thin women who lose weight rapidly while breastfeeding. I know larger women who, vice versa. I know it's like, it does not seem to make any sense. So you just don't really know. I think there's obviously deeper metabolic patterns at play. So anyways, I think that all of this to say that there will be inconsistencies with ovulation during your time of lactation, and that is just sort of like normal and expected. And if you really want to get pregnant and you really want to have more control over this scenario, say because you are in like a time crunch, maybe you're in your earlier 40s and you want to be kind of like boom boom back to back your kids or whatever, there's something going on where you need to kind of speed along the process, then it is in your best interest to begin to put further and further time space in between your feeds of breastfeeds, or at least night wean, because then you could be getting a 12-hour chunk. That's probably the easiest way, although it's not easy because babies like to wean, or they like to nurse at night. But in terms of your body, if you can get into a consistent, you do not nurse overnight, you do not have milk output. Like, so there's no pumping, there's no nursing. That's what I mean. Like feed. So whether you're an exclusive pumper or you feed at the breast, whatever it is you do, what I mean is that when the milk goes out of the boobs, okay, so we need the milk to not go out of the boobs for like about a 12
That
hour
milk in the boobs.
Yes, keep the milk in the boobs if you want this. And just know that, like, even then, that does not mean that it's not going to be your golden ticket that your body's going to continue or going to start ovulating regularly. Although it is kind of like a general thing that when babies start to sleep through the night or when people do sleep train, that they will start to notice many women will get their cycle back at that time. So it's the feeding around the clock in a 24-hour period where there is no stretch of time where the brain can send this like little impulse of, it's called GnRH. It's another hormone that triggers FSH and LH. So if we allow that pulse to happen, even if for like 3 nights in a row. So like this is such a funny thing that can happen. Like the baby just randomly sleeps there. Yeah, 6 weeks old, 5 weeks old. This is what happened with Sabi, my second. She was like an amazing sleeper for like 3 or 4 nights. And I maybe got like, yeah, 8 to 10 hour stretches. It wasn't 12, but there was a couple of long stretches and of no nursing her. And it was just enough to trigger me to start ovulating again. And then I never skipped a period. It was just boom. It was a train that never stopped. And every single month after that, it was game over. My hormone loops turned back on and they were robust enough to stay on. So,
Mine happened when Cade was teething. So he was teething at 4 months. So he had a couple stretches where he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't nurse.
yep,
And then
just long enough.
yep, and then like 2 or 3 weeks later is when I got my period.
Yep, exactly. So, okay. So, one thing I want to say, if we are planning on getting pregnant while we are still nursing, you do need to be okay with the fact that you will likely either lose your milk supply completely or it will lower dramatically. So, you need to have a plan for that. If your plan was to exclusively breastfeed the baby that you have already that's in this world, and now you get pregnant and you've noticed it cut dramatically, that can be really gutting. And especially if we don't know that that's what's happening. And sometimes just that fact alone, people will decide not to try to get pregnant again until they've reached their breastfeeding goals or like a certain time or age or whatever it is. So just know that. Now, not every woman is going to experience that. And usually I would say it's a little bit more gradual. One other thing though that can happen with that is that the milk taste can change and then babies refuse it. So maybe it's like a different kind of flavor. And so then they don't want as much to do with nursing. So again, that can be kind of like abrupt. It can be sad if you weren't ready for it, whatever. You got to have some kind of plan of what it is you're going to be feeding them, especially if they are under a year and they're still going to need milk. Then we need to either do donor breast milk formula, something. Um, but it can just also be subtle and slow, and or you might be one of those people who is what I like to call the mother goose types. So the mother goose woman is able to get pregnant while breastfeeding and breastfeed those other existing child or two or three while they're through their whole pregnancy and beyond, and continue into tandem a newborn and other babies and toddlers, and it's like completely fine. It's no sweat off her back. So again, I don't know why this happens. These people just have different metabolic pictures with their hormone loops, and it is not affected in the kind of way that it is. I would say the mother goose type is not the norm, but you've all met those people. You know those people where you're like, wow, you are like just made for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say something about
Yes.
that?
Hmm.
I feel like this is an important thing to bring up in that sometimes there's a dissonance between what you want and what your body is able to do. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're a person who is an exercise fiend and you're like, wake up every day, you exercise, you go running, and you're like, well, I also have a friend who did that and she got pregnant, you know? So I can do that and also get pregnant. Not necessarily. Like you might be a person who your body needs to not exercise so much to get pregnant.
Hmm.
Same with the breastfeeding, sometimes, especially in the crunchy world, we're like, well, we're going to, tandem feed and we're going to co-sleep and we're going to do all, like, you have this idea in your mind of what you think that you're going to do, but what your body is telling you that it needs, or what your body is able to do, might be different than what your brain wants it to do. And I see a lot of suffering in that, like for, let's
Mhm.
say, tandem nursing. Like, I've had people be like, well, I want to get pregnant, but I have to keep feeding my baby. And it's like, okay, that might be possible for you. And I know that's what you want. And that might not be what your body can do. So
Mhm.
you might have to let go of that a little bit, because even though that's what you want, it's like, we've talked about this so much, of we're so used to this culture where we get whatever we want, it's so immediate.
Mhm.
But sometimes with fertility and with babies and with our bodies, that's not, we can't cognitively manipulate everything in that space. And like you're saying, we don't know if, or like someone might be like, well, I'm going to get back in my size 2 jeans after working out, because after having a baby. It's like, you might think that in your mind, but your body might be the one that is going to hold on to weight until you stop breastfeeding.
Yep.
So there's such a practice of surrender throughout the whole motherhood journey. We've talked about it from getting pregnant to being pregnant to giving birth, postpartum. And this is another example where I've seen personally where these people sometimes have this idea of what they want, and they also have to weigh that with what their body is saying they need to do. So I just want to highlight that.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. It's not up for our control. Even if, like the things that I'm going to say to do in later on in this episode of like, well, here's what we can do if this is what you want. Even if you did all of those 100% perfectly, that doesn't mean that it's going to, because your brain and your ovaries and your just whole physiology just may not be able to do both of those really metabolically taxing things at the same time. And it's not like because you're a bad person. It's
Right. Or
just
you didn't try hard enough,
yeah, it's not because you didn't try hard enough. Like it's a lot. It is a lot to demand. And I honestly look at the mother goose types with just these like big googly like heart eyes. Like I don't understand how I'm like, are you eating, because I'm friends with some of them and I'm like, are you eating like 5,000 calories a day? They're like, no, it's fine. It's just but the way that their body metabolizes things is just they're okay. So back to Ayurveda. I know we keep talking about how we're going to have an episode about this. We need to do it, a dosha episode, but they are more of the Ayurvedic dosha, which is called kapha, Kapha. And kaphas are just constitutionally robust and they have very steady metabolisms and it's just a different deal. And on the polar opposite of a kapha, I would say is the vata, which is like me, and then you're the pitta, the third type. So there's 3 types. You have a lot of vata as well. Um, but the vata like me, I am like the first to die in a famine type body type. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or,
me too in that
in the
regard.
apocalypse, say goodbye to me really early on because it is not. I am not going to.
Don't go to Morgan for protection. She's probably not there anymore.
Nope, nope. I am not on your team. Don't pick me, and it's okay. I won't be offended. Just maybe like have me go out in like a respectful way with dignity or something. But like I'm not unaware of it. I get it. I am a praying mantis. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know why. But my brother is the same way. My mom is the same way. Like, we're just lanky and long, and we have really fast metabolisms and really low blood pressure.
I know. I mean, I'm the same. It sucks because you guys are our apocalypse partners, and both you and me are not good candidates.
Hey, you're way better off than I am. I don't know. But it's like whatever. Everybody has their strengths and things, but I wouldn't live very long in the situation of not being able to eat on a consistent basis. And I know you also feel like you wouldn't be able to, but I think you'd be better off than I would. It's just, but either way, it's like it it's it's not it's not consistent with what society says is like the good thing, right? It's so funny because actually women are more attracted to like high testosterone qualities, right? And testosterone, having high testosterone and being able to be a healthy male is consistent with being able to have other healthy attributes in your body, which is like what makes us attracted to them. Now with females and women, there's such a distortion where well, it's bounced back, but like the 90s, 80s and 90s version of this like very, very rail thin model, like the Kate Moss kind of thing. But that's actually like not at all in line with health or fertility in any way.
No,
But,
no,
it's coming back
opposite.
to this like curvaceous higher estrogen body type, which is like fertile body type, it makes sense. Like that is actually what we want to see. So it's tricky for like when you were mentioning, wanting to bounce back into a postpartum body, like when women have this idea that that's what's going to happen. It's like, well, hold on, let's like know that there are benefits of the ways our bodies are looking for these different reasons and purposes. But anyways, okay, so let's go back to trying to
I
conceive while
digress.
you're breastfeeding. So one thing that you mentioned too about being underweight or undernourished, it's really common when you are breastfeeding because, especially, let's say you're like at the tail end of your first year of breastfeeding, you have made and grown a human in your body for 9 months, and then you birthed them, and then you fed them with your body again for an entire year. And yeah, they've started solids or like maybe you're combo feeding, but still you're making tons and tons of milk. And it is a very metabolically demanding, high caloric process. And so the chances of you, even if you don't look underweight, the chances of you being undernourished are high. So this is where like nutrient repletion is a huge pillar to becoming pregnant again during your breastfeeding time or even after, even in between children, as we talk about often.
Yeah.
One other thing is, oh, go ahead. Did you have something?
Well, I was just going to say, you had mentioned earlier that a lot of times when women can't get pregnant who are breastfeeding, it's because of low progesterone. And undernourishment is one of the biggest risk factors for low progesterone. So it's all connected.
It's all connected. Well, and I was going to say, okay, about low progesterone is that you have a 1-year-old now or a 18-month-old something. And so you're probably from just the process of that, even if you're so happy to be a mom and it brings you so much joy, your sleep has been disrupted. You probably have higher cortisol from overall higher stress. And higher cortisol in a long term steals from the progesterone pathways of the way that our hormones are made. So now we have even less progesterone. So our luteal phase, which is the time between ovulation and period starting, is going to be weaker. And so it could literally be shorter or it could just be less robust. We could have less of a progesterone increase the way we need. And so then, even if we are having a conception, like sperm has met egg, it's it's less likely for it to become a successfully implanted pregnancy that then stays and sticks around. So this is again why I was saying that like if you do become pregnant while you were trying to conceive, it may behoove you, my favorite word.
Behoove. Other
Behoove.
than betwixt. Betwixt is also a great word, which is actually a real word.
Wait, but how do you use betwixt?
Like, I'm going to sleep betwixt the sheets.
Oh, it means between. That's not what I thought it meant at all.
like
Between.
bewitched. Yeah,
Yeah,
between. It's like an
betwixt.
old English word for between.
Wow, I have a very strong visual of like the T in betwixt being a star. What's wrong with my
Oh,
brain?
I don't know. Maybe you're pulling in an ancient language. I don't
Wow,
know.
interesting. But what I was going to say is it behooves you to test your progesterone and potentially supplement. So I just want to point out that there are two pathways working, three: sleep deprivation, higher stress, and the metabolic demands on breastfeeding or on our bodies from breastfeeding. All are going to affect negatively the progesterone side of things. Now, what does progesterone do again? What does it mean? It's progesterone, gestation, pregnancy, baby, pro pregnancy, right? So we need progesterone to be a very good, robust level in order to be pregnant. It is specifically and very purposefully suppressed in our lactational phase, in our lactational physiology, so that we can continue to make enough breast milk and keep the baby that we have in our arms alive, right? We have to understand that so that we can go, okay, well, what can I do to like kind of, I always say like biohack. I know that's like but you know what I mean? Like, how can we take our understanding of physiology and then do things to kind of like circumvent or work with it or like around it in the best way we can? Okay, so one thing to also just note before we get into what can we do is that when we are trying to get pregnant while we are already breastfeeding, one kind of downside of this, in addition to it maybe being harder to actually achieve, is that we're now not probably doing as robust of a preconception time period as we might think optimal. So I get it. I've done this before where I've gotten pregnant while I was still breastfeeding, and so I'm not saying that there's not a time and a place. Not saying that it's like something boohoo, never do that, but we do need to like have that be as a consideration. What can I be doing if I know that I want to get pregnant and I am breastfeeding? Okay, I probably can't do any major detoxes. I can't do any major health rehaul because that's going to affect my breast milk and affect my baby that's currently nursing. So the things that I can do on a preconception phase are going to be the things that will help you with trying to conceive anyway, which will be basically just main lifestyle kind of foundations of health pillars. So let's talk about what those would be. So the first thing to do, though, is to try to figure out a way to lengthen the time between your feeds, specifically if you can at night. So if you can night wean, that would be the biggest thing. So if you have like a 4 month old and you're trying to get pregnant again, I don't necessarily know if that's a great idea, because the 4 month old wanting milk at night is completely reasonable. Um, go for it, to each his own. I just wouldn't recommend it. I think night weaning, personally, in my opinion, it's like 6 months is probably on the lower end for most babies, and up to 12 months somewhere. Like I personally night wean my babies at 12 months. You can do it sometime in there, and especially if they're like gaining weight, you're cleared by the doctor, they're eating well, their latch is good, your milk supply is good, like whatever, all that kind of stuff. But, if you have an 18-month-old and you're like trying to conceive, but you're still feeding them, like night wean that baby. You deserve to sleep too. Like, if you want to keep feeding them, fine, but you probably won't get pregnant, is my point. So we're trying to manage all these factors and like intersect multiple lines and find the Venn diagram, perfect Goldilocks spot. So if you can get to a consistent like 10 to 12 hours where you have lengthened it out, where you are not nursing, you are much more likely to have a more consistent ovulation. Now, if you meddle around with that and like 2 or 3 nights here you nurse in the night and then you didn't and then you do and then you don't, you're going to kind of turn off the system. It needs to be consistent. So I know I said something kind of opposite earlier, but for most physiology types, it needs to be like a consistent, again, for especially when we're thinking month after month, it may take much longer to get pregnant while we're nursing. So you want to give yourself the best chance. So if you can consistently hold that boundary that we're not night nursing anymore, you're much more likely to get your cycle into a consistent time and realm. Okay. So now in addition to that, we need to be focusing on nutrition as like your main thing. It's like you got two main goals and there's a couple ancillary things. Your main goals are to night wean and then to feed yourself like no other.
Like a football player.
Yes. You are like one of those gym guys that's trying to gain 40 pounds before you cut or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So you need to be eating so much, and ideally specifically those heavy hitter nutrient dense foods. So like broth and eggs and fatty fish and organs, or like maybe you're taking an organ supplement because you don't actually like to eat organs. Like I am not somebody that eats organs. I mean, maybe if it's like a liver mixed into some kind of ground beef thing that I can't taste, fine, whatever. But otherwise you're not going to catch me dead eating them, but I will take them in supplement form all day every day. So really focusing on enough protein and fat and carbohydrates. You are not trying to go low carb. You're not trying to lose weight, breastfeed, and get pregnant at the same time. It's not happening. Like
Yeah.
that is not happening. You are not trying to lose. Let me just say it one more time for those in the back. You are not trying to nurse the baby that you have in your arms and like exercise a ton and eat low carb to lose weight and get pregnant. Like that is not going to
Not
happen.
happening.
It's not happening. Or if it does, you are going to feel like crap. Like here's
Yeah.
the thing is like you will be entering a new pregnancy again, back to back. You're still nursing too, feeling probably pretty shitty. And we don't want that for you. So I'm going to just say don't do that. Doctor's orders.
And because when I've worked with patients, I find that a lot of times women have a hard time thinking of themselves. Think of your future baby,
Mhm.
because a lot of times we're so focused on just getting pregnant that we don't realize going into a pregnancy depleted not only affects us, but it can affect the baby, the second baby. So, like, I had a patient once, and it's totally understandable. And I've been there too now that I have 2 kids. She was trying to conceive again, and I would ask her what she was eating, and it's like she picks at her kid's meal the foods he doesn't eat, you know, and she'll be like, well, I'll buy blueberries, but like I save them for my toddler. And I'm just like, I get that. My toddler eats all the blueberries too. But I was like, I don't want you to think about feeding your toddler and feeding yourself. I want you to think about feeding your toddler and feeding your new baby that you're trying
Yeah.
to bring into the world. So when you sit down to eat, don't think, oh, I need to feed myself. Think, I need to feed my future baby, because if you aren't eating like that, you might not get a future baby. You know what I mean? So if you must think of it in the context of others, because women are just like that,
Yeah.
think I am eating right now for my baby's brain that I'm going to build, for my baby's bones that I'm going to build, for my whatever, not just for yourself. Because sometimes women just deal. They can persevere and push through really crazy stuff like not eating and not sleeping, and but think about for your future baby, like how to eat in that way.
Yeah, it's a different motivation factor for some people to think about it like that.
Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 97% of women in the US take a prenatal supplement, yet 95% plus are still deficient in key nutrients? My favorite prenatal is from a company called Needed because they dose nutrients at levels to not just meet the bare minimum as most prenatals do. They actually use form of nutrients and dosages that allow mama and baby to thrive. Needed actually approached me years ago and asked me if I could help them design the perfect prenatal because they knew that the current prenatals available were not actually helping women. We spent over 3 years diving into the research and understanding what practitioners are seeing and what women actually need at this important season before we formulated this amazingly supportive option. It's no wonder over 4,000 practitioners now recommend Needed, something I am very proud of. If you have followed me for a while, you know that prenatals and optimizing nutrients starts long before pregnancy, so no matter where you are along your fertility or motherhood journey, Needed is the brand I recommend. Head to thisisneeded.com and use code HEALTHYMOTHER to save 20% on your first order. Again, visit thisisneeded.com and use code HEALTHYMOTHER to save 20%. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, exactly. Like you, you can have some kind of exercise process that you like. I would just say probably go on the gentler end of things. We're not trying to do like hit workouts. Like some walking or like gentle weightlifting, I think is all fine. And again, it depends on your physiology though. If you have a rockin' cycle and like none of this really may apply to you. But if you're one of those people who is struggling with this, that's the person I'm talking about. So if you're like, oh, I get to work out and I'm pregnant and I'm nursing, it's like, okay, cool, good for you. But that's not who I'm talking
Yeah.
about. I'm talking about the vast majority of people who have a hard time managing all that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
your meals are really going to need a boost. And so, whether you need to figure out some kind of like meal prep situation where you're making several things to just have in the fridge, or you are getting a meal delivery service, or you're hiring out, or you are just being more intentional about making a double batch every single meal that you make for dinner so that you have something, you have extras, you always have leftovers, or you have frozen something, etc. It's going to be a big kind of shift and change, and it's important because my experience, this is an N of one, but I've actually seen it happen repeatedly in practice, is that when I got pregnant with my third, I was still nursing my second and I'd had a miscarriage between. So actually, I got pregnant when my second baby was 10 months old and was pregnant for all like 6 weeks, right? So then I had a miscarriage and then a month, that was in November, December, January. Yeah. So 2 months later, I got pregnant again with now my third baby, still nursing this whole time. And I was already, for my physiology, the way that my body bottoms out around that like 13, 14 months, like that's a very thin time of my life. And so that's what I was rocking when I got pregnant. Okay, my point is that it was like not a nutrient repleted phase, and I'd already had now this other loss too, which is like a big energetic need that then was gone. And so then the weekend that I found out I was pregnant was also when the whole world shut down for COVID. So um it was it was stressful. There was a weirdness in the air and everything. And so that whole pregnancy was like going into it underweight, undernourished, nursing, having had a just miscarriage, and the whole world was shut down. And my third baby was born 2 pounds less than my first two kids. So they were 9'3", both of them, first one and second one. And then my third, Sloan, was 7'8". So, I mean, a little less than 2 pounds. But and she was 40 weeks. Like it wasn't like she was early. I didn't gain as much with the pregnancy with her, but it wasn't like significantly less. And I just blame myself is basically what I'm trying to say. I blame myself for how small she is. And she's just a little bean and she's getting taller now, but literally she did not gain. Well, she had massive weight gain problems as a baby, but again, it's sort of like classic for my kids until we get their lip and tongue tie stuff figured out. But even then, she still had a really hard time gaining. She was always real small on the curve. And then for like a year and a half, between like 1 and 2.5, she barely gained any weight at all. She did get taller, but she's just got like a completely different body type. She's really narrow, like her little wrist bones and her little leg bones, and she's just like little. And I can't help but think that that has something to do with the way that my nutrition was lacking in that time period. Um, and it was just kind of like probably irresponsible of me. I really wanted to just do it and not have to like wean and do the whole thing. I just don't know. I was excited, and she's okay. It's fine. She doesn't have any major health issues, but there is something about that I kind of harbor this guilt that I probably need to let go of. But it's like I have to wonder, and then now my fourth, I had a 3-year age gap between and did a strong preconception. But then I like the couple of months that I was leading up to her, I was on this like insane cleanse, but I was the healthiest I've ever been. So it wasn't really an intentional preconception, but it happened. And she was 8'8". So she was a whole pound more, but then also just like very, her body type looks more like my second. And so who knows if it has anything to do with that. Maybe it was all coincidence, but it did feel to me like, oh, I probably couldn't give to you as much as I needed to, and I certainly didn't give to myself, and I had a very hard time postpartum after
Yeah.
that third
Wow.
one.
And she
And
didn't
so,
sleep well either.
well, and exactly, she didn't sleep, but it's like, did
So
she
it's
not
like,
sleep because her body,
yeah.
she was like not as healthy, or is that just her personality? Did it have nothing to do with it? I don't know, but I didn't have the resiliency to deal with her lack of sleep in the way that I think I would have if I had taken care of myself better. And so you don't want to suffer. My point in saying all this is like, you as the woman and as the mother and as the, again, always we say like the nervous system of the household, you don't want to suffer. So when we're making these decisions to expand our family and we're maybe doing something like nursing or whatever, it's like, okay, we can do it. We just have to be really intentional and smart and know what we're going up against and know the best ways to take care of ourselves, which is going to be a heavy nutrient focus and for sure proper supplementation. So this is where I would be taking the full 8 capsules needed prenatal multi. I would not go to like the essentials, which is the 3 capsule one. You are in a time where you need as much as you can be getting. I would add organs onto that. You're getting your magnesium, your vitamin D3. You've done a blood panel. You need to make sure that you're not going into another pregnancy already anemic or low thyroid or low vitamin D or anything like that. So in this time period, again, because you can't do like a full preconception, that is one thing you can totally do. You can get your blood checked and make sure that there's some like basics that are up to speed and up to level, because you can absolutely get them higher during your time of breastfeeding. So we need to have like some sort of baseline health that is there before we do this, in my opinion. Okay, so then also, well, hold on. Did you have anything to say about any of that?
Well, I just wanted to say one thing, which is kind of off topic, but also on topic. So let's say it's your first baby, you're breastfeeding them, and you're going to try to get pregnant again. This kind of falls into the realm of secondary infertility, but one thing that people might think is, oh, I'm just breastfeeding. That's why it's hard for me to get pregnant. And this is where doing lab work is really important, especially to check your thyroid antibodies, because it isn't uncommon for women to have postpartum thyroid issues when they didn't before.
Mhm.
And so they might be like just trying and just blaming it on the fact that they're nursing, when the whole time they maybe have a new thyroid condition or even like an autoimmune thyroid condition that would be a simple thing to check. And so it's another thing where you it's like if a woman knows she's PCOS and they're having a hard time conceiving when actually her husband also has a sperm problem, but they never check him because she has PCOS. They assume that's the problem, so they don't keep checking. It's the same kind of thing with nursing. It's like you might just assume, oh, I'm having a hard time conceiving because I'm nursing, when there could be something else going on as well. So don't neglect the investigation and just assume that if you're having a hard time, it's just nursing, and once I wean, it'll be fine. And that might be true for sure. But there might be other things going on that weren't present prior to your previous pregnancy. Wow, it's a lot of peas.
Prior to the previous pregnancy. Yes, exactly. And so if you're, refer to the recurrent pregnancy loss. I'm going to put that in the show notes episode. Oh, and the progesterone episode, and we have a weaning episode.
We also have a just miscarriage episode. We have so many resources. We
Yes.
are cool. This is a cool
We're
podcast.
cool. Speaking of, actually, I'm going to put a little plug right here. If you like this podcast and if you get value out of it and you enjoy it, Will you please, 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 please? It is one of our big goals to grow the podcast, and it is just a glacially slow process. And it really happens mostly from when people send episodes to other people who then start to listen to them. But it also really helps when you like do the whole 5 stars and you subscribe, because the powers that be see that as interest and dedication from listeners, that they're like, they like it enough to subscribe to it so that it automatically will download all of the episodes when we come out, which we post every Wednesday. And it's just a way for you to kind of like help us. And so if you find any benefit in this, please just like pause. I'll give you a second. Go rate and
Go
subscribe.
eat something while you're doing it.
Yes, exactly. Go grab a snack and then listen to the rest of this. Okay, ready? I'm going to give you some time. Okay. I really want you to do it. Like, please, for me and for Leah, let's do it. Okay.
Okay.
So, in addition to those two being your like top goals, right? We need to lengthen out the feed, so we night wean and then we are eating a ton. There are some herbs that we can take as well, and they are safe in nursing, but we do need to understand that they can affect your supply. So now, while the pregnancy also might affect your supply, you don't really know until you get pregnant, but these herbs may reduce your supply. So you have to be okay with that. It's not going to wean you. It's not going to like in 2 weeks now you have no milk kind of thing, but you might notice some reduction. So if your baby is exclusively fed, you don't want to go formula and you don't have a bunch of milk saved up, this is something to consider, you know? Okay, so Vitex, which is called chased tree berry, can be a very helpful supplement to help. It has some progesteronic effects. It's good also in conjunction with some other herbs like ashwagandha or maca or shatavari, um, which can also just be taken singularly. Like they don't all have to be taken together, but these things can, I would say that, okay, Vitex is in its own category, and then ashwagandha, shatavari, and maca are kind of in their own other category. So Vitex is a proprogesterone, so it can help with that if we are having some low progesterone, which is very common in the lactational physiology state. It can also help with some ovulation stuff, and it's something that has a longer term effect. So you're not going to take it for 1 month and probably notice that much from it. You need to be taking it for a couple of months because it has an adaptogenic side of it. Same thing with ashwagandha, shatavari, or maca. These are all like sort of longer term play herbs. They're not acute. They're not like real short acting. They're a long term thing. Those last three are kind of general reproductive adaptogens, but they also affect that hypothalamic pituitary axis that I was talking about beforehand. So if we think that there's maybe a little bit of like brain turn off to the ovulation state of things, like I was mentioning, those would be great for that. But they're also nutritive, and there's an energetic quality to them that's really helpful. They modulate stress. So, like I was saying, cortisol can steal from the progesterone pathway. So, they can be really, really good with managing your stress postpartum. And they're just great herbs in general. I would say, like
Yeah.
ashwagandha and shatavari particularly, but then maca has that more um, reproductive side to it as well. So again, I'm not your doctor. You clear these with your providers. I don't know anything about you and your physiology, but these are things to look up and research and see if they would be a good add to your routine.
Yeah. The one thing to note about Vitex too is it does lower prolactin. So that is something that can be helpful in getting pregnant because it can lower that prolactin so that you can ovulate, but it can lower your prolactin, which is the hormone that you need to breastfeed. So, like you said, it can lower your milk supply because we use or Vitex in women who are not breastfeeding when they have high prolactin, and I see it come down very, very well. So, I'm sure in a breastfeeding person, it also would be doing similar things. So, just know that if you're like, no, I want to get pregnant, but I really, 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 really don't want to lose, as much milk, maybe start with the other three first, and then know that Vitex is an option, but it might reduce things more than the others would.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually making me feel like maybe I want to take that like right now
Yeah.
because it would help a little bit.
And I would take it at night because it's, you make the most milk at night. And then in the morning is when prolactin is the highest. So if you take it at night, if you're trying to like wean or whatever, it's a nice thing to take at night. And then it just kind of lowers that prolactin that's high in the morning, which is why your breast milk is so high in the morning.
Awesome. Thank you for that tidbit. Okay, so we've got night wean, nutrient repletion, some herbs to help you. Point 4 would be to just kind of continue to focus on some of those foundations of health. So getting as much in the highest quality sleep as you can, and then moving your body without stressing your body. Okay. And in that also just general stress reduction. If there's like something going on that is continually stressing you, this is a huge hurdle to fertility in general, which you, Dr. Leah, talk about all the time. Okay, number 5 would be to start tracking your cycles or any signs that you have whatsoever of potential ovulation, but also maybe you just want to do something like checking your BBTs, which is like your basal body temperature, um, on a chart and seeing if there is any changes with your cervical mucus or any kind of bumps in your temperature. Maybe you start doing some ovulation strips, like just gathering some data and being like, am I maybe because you are ovulating or you'll catch your ovulation and you can be like, oh, look, it's happening. You know, once you've caught your ovulation, it's usually too late. But depends on how the method that you go about that, but it's just good data to start having, right? So we're like, okay, because it can take months. And so, you know, when you want to get pregnant, at least in my experience, and I feel like most people will relate with this, when you want to be pregnant, you want a newborn in your arms like yesterday. And the whole thing can just feel like it's taking so dang long. And so the earlier that you start with some of this cycle tracking and you get this data point started, the more helpful it will be as the months go on if you don't conceive in those months, so that you can be like, this is the information that I have. So I do think that's a great idea. You can get something like an Aura ring, or temp drop is like an armband that you wear at night, or one of these other things where you can literally just stick a thermometer in your mouth to be.
Or there's urine testing like
Yes.
Mira or Anitu, which will look at your actual hormone levels from the urine, which can be helpful. They all have different price points and different things, but if you're serious about really trying to track it, there are options for you out
Yes,
there.
there's methods. You can do it. Okay, and then the last thing I would say is just another reminder, another plug here, that if you do become pregnant, congratulations to you. And I do think it's a really good idea to test your progesterone early on in that pregnancy, because you don't want to lose it simply because there is low progesterone, which would be normal in the lactational physiology state. So if we need to supplement in order to retain the pregnancy, then we do. Now, that does not mean that it's a guaranteed pregnancy. If there's something going on with the embryo, like a chromosomal abnormality or something else that will affect the implantation integrity or whatever, the baby will still go if the baby needs to go and the body will take care of it. But if it is a completely healthy, fine baby and conception and implantation, but then it's just there isn't quite enough progesterone to keep it growing normally and to keep it in, we can have accounted for that, knowing that you are in a higher risk state of having lower progesterone because you are already nursing. So that is all I have for you about that. I hope it answers most of the main questions and gives you some direction to steer this boat towards your little lighthouse of new baby pregnancy, and gives you some things to think about along the way. And just like, we get it. It's a
Yep.
whole thing. You want to grow
The
your
whole
family, but
thing.
you're also feeding your family. And there's just some ways to go about it so that it can be more successful.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Morgan.
Thank you. Getting sick while pregnant or breastfeeding is tricky, not only because you feel like crap and need to get back on your feet to grow and take care of your children, but also because you may not know what is safe or effective to take and do to help yourself. The internet is not very helpful when it comes to searching for cold and flu remedies that are safe while pregnant and breastfeeding, so I've made a course that outlines it all for you. I also threw in allergy remedies as well as natural UTI care, because often there are things that can be done to prevent the need for antibiotics. Moms really shouldn't be allowed to get sick, but here we are. Find the course link in the show notes and get back to feeling well by supporting your immune system naturally and safely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Healthy as a Mother podcast. In order for others to hear this information, please leave a review with Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and send to a friend who could benefit from this content. We're so excited to share more on becoming and being a mother next time.
And please remember that the ideas and views of this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not intended to serve as a substitute for medical care of any kind, including the diagnosis or treatment of any illness or disease. Consult with your provider before integrating this information into your own care plan. And remember, a healthier future starts now, and it starts with you.